Hi everyone, welcome. Let's study biology together. My name is Janet and I'm an experienced teacher with a passion to teach biology. I will be teaching you with clarity and help develop your creativity and critical thinking skills. To receive notification of new biology videos, please click the subscribe button below to subscribe. Thank you. Today we will study Chapter 2, Part 3 about cell biology and cell organization, and specifically about plant tissues, types of plant tissues. These videos that are made are suitable for those studying biology for the SPM Malaysian syllabus or O-levels biology and other types of exams where the content may be relevant to the syllabus. For the learning outcomes, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to: Number 1, state the different types of plant tissues. Number 2, state the general functions of the different plant tissues. And number 3, be able to define the meaning of meristem or meristematic tissues, apical meristem, and the lateral meristem. Here is an overview of what we will be discussing today. Our topic today is plant tissues. Plant tissues can be divided into two main types. A, the meristematic tissues or meristem, and B, the permanent tissues. Meristematic tissues can be further divided into two types: the apical meristem and secondly the lateral meristem. Generally, meristematic tissues carry out cell division by mitosis to produce new cells for growth. For permanent tissues, there are three types: dermal tissue, ground tissue, and vascular tissue. Dermal tissue can be further divided into the epidermis, and specialized cells in the dermal tissue includes the root hair cells and the guard cells. Generally, dermal tissue is found on the outer surface of the plant and is used for protection against injury and other functions like water absorption and regulation of stomatal pore. We will discuss this later on. So dermal tissue is mainly used for protection and is found on the surface of the plant body. For ground tissue, there are three main types: parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Generally, ground tissue is used to give support to the plant, and some types of specialized ground tissue are involved in photosynthesis and storage of food. Lastly, we have the vascular tissue, which is used in transport, and this consists of the xylem tissue and the phloem tissue. Both are used in the transport of substances in the plant. We'll also be discussing this in more detail as we go along. So do not be discouraged by the new terms that you are learning here, as we will be discussing them in more detail, one at a time, as we go along. And you can always repeat the video to learn up these terms. Here we see the functions of the various plant tissues. Meristematic tissues are used to produce new cells for growth. They produce new cells through cell division by a process called mitosis. For permanent tissues, there are three different types: the dermal tissues, ground tissues, and vascular tissues. Dermal tissues are used for protection against injury, for absorption of water from the soil, especially in the roots, and to allow diffusion of carbon dioxide into the leaf via the stoma. Ground tissues are used to support the plant to carry out photosynthesis and produce the organic food substances, and for storage of food substances in the plant. Vascular tissues are used for the transport of substances like water, mineral salts, and organic food compounds in the plant. Here is an easy memory aid to help you remember the different types of plant tissues. It is called a mnemonic. Mary puts delicious grapes in vase. The first letter of each word is the same as the first letter of the names of the types of tissues. M for meristematic, P for permanent, DE for dermal, GR for ground, and VAS for vascular. So in this way, you can remember the key words M, P, D, G, V, and from there you remember the types of plant tissues. To make this memory aid work for you, you have to repeat it constantly, and also imagine a picture of Mary peeling or putting delicious grapes. You can either use put or peel, P-E-E-L. Okay, so put for me is easier because it's easier to remember put. Mary puts delicious grapes in the vase. So we need to repeat it frequently in order to remember it. After a while, you will be able to recall it. Let us start to discuss the types of plant tissues. So there are two main types of plant tissues. That is the meristematic tissues or meristem and the permanent tissues. We'll start with A, meristematic tissues or meristem. This tissue is divided into two main types, apical meristem and lateral meristem. Meristematic tissues are defined as tissues that consist of actively dividing cells which function to produce new cells by mitosis, a type of cell division, for growth. So these cells are responsible to produce new cells for the growth of the plant. For example, the shoot will grow higher and higher, and the roots will grow longer and longer and further down into the soil. And the stem may grow bigger and bigger as a result of the activity of the meristematic tissues. The structure of these tissues is that they consist of small cells, young cells that have thin walls, large nuclei, and no vacuoles because they are young cells. In addition, the location of the meristematic tissues is at the apex of the plant, meaning at the root tip and the shoot tip, and also in the stem, in the cambium of the stems and roots. So basically there are two types of meristems, the apical meristem and the lateral meristem. The first type of meristem is the apical meristem. Apical comes from the word apex, meaning the top. So the apical meristem is located in the shoot tip and the root tip. It causes the plant to grow in length, that is, the shoot will grow higher up and the roots will grow longer and further down into the soil. In this picture on the left, we see the root apical meristem. It is protected by a root cap as it grows in the soil. On the right hand side, we see the shoot apical meristem, which is also at the tip of the plant. It also divides by mitosis to produce new cells for growth. The second type of meristem is called the lateral meristem. It is found in the stem and the root, and it causes the plant stem to grow in diameter, that is, sideways, as the word lateral means sideways. For example, cambium in the stem is the lateral meristem that divides to produce new cells. These new cells will later differentiate to form new xylem and phylum in the stem. So the lateral meristem is different from the apical meristem because it causes the plant stem to grow sideways and not grow in height or length. Lastly, let's try a hot question that tests your higher order thinking skills. Hot questions are quite common in the biology exams, so let us practice answering them. They test your knowledge in new situations. So this is the question. Explain why a gardener often cuts off the shoot tips on the branches of an Izora species plant. Now we have noticed people who do gardening pruning and cutting off the shoot tips on the branches of their plants. What is the reason for that? Take a moment to look through the answers from A to D and decide which is the answer. Let us look at the explanation. When the shoot tip is cut off, the apical meristem at the shoot tip is removed. Since the apical meristem is the tissue that has cells that divide actively to produce new cells for growth, so without the apical meristem, the shoot will not be able to grow longer anymore. It cannot grow at all. Secondly, the shoot tip also produces a hormone that blocks and suppresses the growth of the lateral buds when it is present. Take a look at the picture above. You will see an apical bud which is at the shoot tip, which contains the apical meristem. Now, as long as the apical bud is there or the shoot tip is there, it produces a hormone that blocks the lateral bud below it from growing. But once the apical bud or the shoot tip is removed, this hormone is no longer produced, and so the lateral buds can now grow out sideways to produce side branches of the plant. This will make the plant bushier and better looking in appearance. So the answer is B. That concludes the first lesson. For our next lesson, we will be studying the permanent tissues, which are the dermal tissues, ground tissues, and vascular tissues. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video. Goodbye.